Hi all, so this is Maria for MuBoo TV, and we have a particularly inspirational and special guest today. I'm here at Finch Avenue West, and I am honored to be in the presence of Liberal MP, the Honourable Judy Sgro. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you, and so very nice to meet you and to have an opportunity to talk to your viewers about a variety of issues that are very important.
All right, thank you, thank you. So could you maybe tell our viewers a little bit about, your political career and what you've been doing so far? I know you've been in politics for a very long time.
I've been in politics about 25 years.
Wow.
And that was right from the municipal level and at the federal level. At the federal level, I have been at one time under Paul Martin and the Liberal government, the Minister of Citizenship and Immigration. And that provided me a wonderful opportunity to meet so many people in Canada, that coming to Canada, and the whole immigration portfolio was a real thrill of a lifetime to have that opportunity.
Definitely, I can imagine. So I think a lot of our viewers, they know you by face and probably by your working title, and that goes for a lot of, I think, local politicians and national politicians as well. But I think a lot of people don't really know, exactly what the work entails, what you guys do on a regular basis. So maybe you could walk our viewers through, your job on the daily level, from a day-to-day basis. What is it that you do?
Well, we're right now meeting in my constituency office, which is a Friday. And that's the day that I get to speak to my constituents and others about a variety of issues. Immigration, of course, is a big issue in this office.
Definitely.
Family reunification and all the things that are tied into that, with people wanting their family members to come for a visit. That takes up probably 70% of the workload here in this office. The balance is handled through people's application for citizenship, applications for old age security, Canada pension, disability, problems with Revenue Canada. That's something that has a lot of focus on it right now at this particular time.
Yeah, for sure.
A variety of issues that are handled here in Toronto. But Monday to Thursday, when the House is sitting, which is a typical September to June cycle, I'm in Ottawa working on committees. I'm vice chair of the Status of Women, the Standing Committee on the Status of Women. And I'm also critic for seniors and pension reform. So while I'm in Ottawa, I attend committee meetings, angry question periods, argue about how to get policies that are more reflective of the needs of communities like mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a bit of a shortcut.
Right, yeah. Compressed version. So yeah, just back to your long political career, because I think it's very impressive. Sgro has been, I think, a representative for your request for about 10 years in the House of Commons, right?
13 now.
13 now. So throughout that time, when you reminisce on that time, is there any particular accomplishments, any particular breakthroughs that you kind of take pride in, or that you particularly remember?
When I went to Ottawa, part of the reason that I had been a Metro councillor here in the city, and I was always on budget committees and always having to find ways to cut budgets. And my challenge was to go where I felt they had an opportunity. And Prime Minister Crétin, at the time I got elected, I told him I wanted to put a task force together to study the cities issue, that I felt the cities were in grave problems, and cities are not the responsibility of the federal government.
Exactly.
But I was able to convince him to put this task force together to look at the pressures in the 21st century facing our cities. And he agreed. And as a result of that report, we ended up with this gas tax that people talk about here.
Yeah, exactly.
We ended up with a gas tax, and we really got, because of that report, I got cities on the agenda at the federal level. That's a major accomplishment, because up until then you couldn't even ask a question about cities because they were not federal responsibility.
Yeah. Wow.
That's one thing, and I think the second was my years as being Minister of Citizenship and Immigration. That was tremendously rewarding.
Yeah.
And that was probably one I go down as one of the most difficult challenges, but the most rewarding at the same time.
Absolutely. So again, what do you think are what's your main focus right now in terms of short-term goals and also long-term goals for your constituency in your quest? Could you identify some of the goals that you guys are trying
Well,
to reach?
I'm working very hard at trying to do a couple of things, and you know, I represent this wonderful riding of York West, which is part of that is the Jane Finch community that's here, and trying to make sure that we've got policies that are reflective of the needs of my constituents at all levels. You know, communities get bad reputations sometimes very easily, and to change that, I've represented a variety of different areas within my 25 years, and I can say that the Jane Finch community in particular has got to be one of the best, one of the richest when it comes to cultural diversity, but more importantly, the people themselves. You know, they're hardworking, law-abiding citizens. They're warm, they reach out to you, just as we are sitting here having this conversation.
Definitely.
I'm truly blessed by having the opportunity to represent such a great community.
Yeah.
Where we go from here is a continuation of trying to point out the issues of poverty, the fact that you know, we have many people coming to this country that immigrate here for family reunification, so on and so forth, that you know, are unable to find work and are struggling. And their voices need to be heard, and that's part of my job, is to be a voice for my constituents and the issues that matter to them. People come to this country, all they want is a chance.
Definitely.
They just want an opportunity.
I definitely agree with that.
And you know, it's up to us to do what we can to provide opportunities, whether we're talking about our kids or we're talking about new immigrants. And this is a community made up out of over 120 different languages spoken.
Exactly. I mean, following up on that, I actually read on your website, I think, that you are identifying new Canadians, as you say, as a resource that needs to be exploited for, you know, the benefits of the overall communities to be fully exploited and fully taken advantage of. And what is the Liberal Party and your take in particular on achieving these things and achieving like a full integration? A successful integration?
Well, you know, you need to be able to have programs, the settlement programs, and a lot of those, unfortunately, that are being cut today.
Yeah.
This morning, their funding is being cut. So new immigrants to Canada, the faster they can settle into our country, the faster they can find housing, education, jobs, the faster they can contribute to what is Canada's dream as well as theirs, that they are successful. And, you know, right now, we're seeing everything going the opposite way. You know, there's this issue from the current Minister of Immigration saying, well, we think we should let business cherry pick who they want to come to Canada and who should be working and who shouldn't be working. That's not the Canada that you and I know.
Exactly.
And I don't believe it's the Canada that anybody wants. We all want a chance to achieve the dream. And everybody deserves that chance. And that's all people are looking for. They don't want a handout.
Exactly.
They want a hand up to achieve their dreams. And the sooner people are successful, the richer Canada is. The Liberal Party believes very much in providing opportunity. It's socially responsible and fiscally responsible. That's what the Liberal Party is, in contrast to the other two parties, is that we want to see everybody achieve their dream, but you do it in a fiscally responsible way. And we've always been able to do that previously, and we look forward to being a voice for the people who don't have a voice right now.
Exactly. I think that's a tremendously important message, and we'll be right back after a couple of messages. Right back. So we're back with the Liberal MP, Judy Sgro, and we were talking a little bit before the break about you know, immigration policies and the stricter, you know, sort of wave of immigration policies that I think we've seen, you know, not only here in Canada, but, you know, in the Western world in general, in Europe, you know, North America. And I think a lot of immigrants have that kind of feeling that things have been changing and that our local policies have become a lot stricter. And I know that you used to work as an immigration, you know, minister, and that you were more, I think, empathetic, fighting for, you know, family reunification policies and these sorts of things. So what is your take on that development that we're seeing now in terms of a more conservative wave of immigration?
Bill C-31, which is the new immigration bill that is going to fundamentally change the direction of Canada's going in. Everything from, you know, refugees being put into detention for a year, and the cherry picking by companies as to who should come to Canada and who shouldn't. This country is built on immigration. We all came from somewhere at some point. And, you know, denying people the chance to come is, I think, you know, just, it's a difficult job being the Minister of Immigration. I have to put that on the table. It is one of the hardest jobs, both politically and emotionally. It's a tough job. The point is, you know, we have a declining birth rate around the world. Definitely. Immigration is becoming very competitive. Everybody wants to get the best and the brightest. We also have an obligation to take 20,000 refugees a year into this country as a humanitarian grounds to do that. You know, the minister's always focusing on those who are abusing. What about focusing on all the ones that come here and are successful and contribute and pay taxes and buy houses and do all those wonderful things? That's what helps growth. All this talk about, well, we'll invest in businesses and give tax break to businesses. Well, you know what? Opening the door to people to come in that need to buy a house, they need to grow, their families grow, they get a job, and they contribute immensely to building Canada. Definitely. That's the Liberal way. That's the opportunity to not throw money away, but you're investing in people. Give them the opportunity. People, many of these variety stores, you look at them, who's working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day? All right? You're not going to get Canadian-born people doing that. Exactly. You get new immigrants doing that are willing to work and do all of that work. We need them. Look at the work in our agricultural sector. They have to bring in farm workers from Venezuela and Ecuador and all these other countries because Canadians, they don't want to do those jobs because they're looking for a betterment for themselves. So, you know, providing opportunity for people to better their lives is a good thing. It's something that the Liberals have always done and something that Canada needs to have.
Definitely. I absolutely agree with you on that. Furthermore, speaking of these particular bills, what is the C4? Could you maybe elaborate on that a little bit? I was reading up on it, but I couldn't really grasp, you know, the content of it. I think it's related to immigration, though, right?
There's a variety of bills out there. I mean, this government talks about getting tough on crime, and that's their whole focus is getting tough on crime. If anybody breaks the law, put them in jail, and you know, at a cost of about $120,000 a year for each person that is put into jail, rather than investing that money into crime prevention, community resources, and providing opportunities. Because if you provide opportunities for people, they're not getting into crime because they want to necessarily. It's because of a whole lot of other reasons. So I think their focus when it comes to crime is completely off base. The U.S. tried this tough on crime routine, and in fact they're finding out that they've got their jails are all full and people are coming out and committing more crime, not less crime. So it's about rehabilitation, it's about prevention. It's about safe communities.
Definitely. Prevention is very, very important. Moving on to a bit of a different subject, though, what is your take on the conservative opting for the pension reform? Well, I know you have very strong opinions about that.
Well, you know what, again, it's not the Canadian way. The Canadian way is having a compassionate, caring society. If people want to work till they're 80, God bless them, go right ahead. The Liberals are quite happy to see that. Not an issue there. But the point is to change your date of retirement to 70 to move it up to 67. There's no reason for that. There's not a fundamental reason of finances. It's all well secured. That's an ideological approach by this government. They just think that the less government intervention is anywhere, the better off people are. So the Liberals will, we have a chance to form government. The Liberals will keep it at 65. We will not change it. And we believe that people at 65, if they want to work, continue working. If they want to change their careers, let them do that. But don't start forcing people. Many of the people that I see in this office can't even make it to 65. They're coming in, they've worked in tough jobs all their life. They haven't had nice cushy jobs where they're sitting at a table.
That's a good point.
They've got hard, tough jobs. Their body doesn't carry them beyond 65 in those jobs. And you know, they're looking to be able to live in this caring society that I say is Canada, was Canada. Well, we need to get the Liberals back in. It'll be that Canada that we want.
That is a very good point as well. I think we're going to take a short commercial break and we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Today's world is rich in information, ideas, and perspectives that demand versatility. At York, our multifaceted approach engages diverse viewpoints, crosses barriers, and creates solutions to evolving student and societal needs. We understand the requirements of an interdisciplinary world. We are the interdisciplinary university.
So this is Maria again, and we're back here with Judy Sgro, the Liberal MP. And we were talking a little bit before the break about elderly are kind of being targeted in a negative way by the current government. But from my perspective, I'm a student, and I think it's not only necessarily, the elderly that are being struck with, certain policies. Tuition fees in Ontario are, as you probably know, the highest, of any provinces in Canada. And I think I read somewhere that there's been a 300% increase in tuition fees since the 1990s, which does not correlate with inflation and these kind of things. And even next year, I heard something about a 5% raise or increase in tuition fees. Have you heard about the 30%? I think it was decrease in tuition fees. Could you kind of explain that for us?
Well, let me say to you that all of us as elected officials, I think, recognize that Canada's future is in making sure that our young people are educated. We need to be able to compete around the world with some of the very highly skilled students from India, China, Taiwan, many other places. And there's a cost to tuition and all of that. And there's an Ontario Student Federation, a Canada Student Federation that comes to Ottawa and lobbies us all the time. The Liberals have always been very sensitive to the issues of tuition to the extent that they can. It's not a direct area of responsibility. We do social transfers down to the provinces, and then the provinces have to decide where the priorities. The real challenge is the fact that the health care with an aging population is eating up such a large portion of the budget. There's only so much left. So, you're running a house, you have $1, and if 65 cents of that dollar goes to health care, you're left with 35 cents. And then you've got to divvy that up in all of the other areas. And so there is only so much to go around. But clearly, I think all of us understand the need to make sure that our young people get a chance to get into university and that they get a good education. How we deal with things like, the OSAP and the payback, and there's things that we can be doing in that area so that even if you owe it, but you don't have to pay any interest on it for 10 years after you get out of school or something. So you have plenty of time. I know my daughter, when she graduated from law school, had a debt of $30,000 to carry, and actually ended up rolling it into her first mortgage on a house a few years later. And they're still paying the mortgage, and they're still paying their student debt, probably, right? That's just the way it is. Definitely. But it is an issue that we care about. It's just a question of having enough money to be able to do what needs to be done.
Right. Yeah, on to another subject. I've got to say, I think you're a very inspirational person, not just as an individual, but I think as a woman, you're an inspiration to a lot of us,
Thank you.
Aspiring to go into politics and aspiring to do these things. So on that note, how does it feel? What's your experience, your personal experience being a woman in a man's world, in a man's field, basically?
It's a tough job. This is not an easy job for anybody, man or woman. I think it's tougher for a woman because we still have to fight to get our voices heard. Sitting around a boardroom table with 10 men and 1 woman, you still have to fight to get your voice heard. Men are more comfortable with men, and there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. But opportunities for women, I think, there's lots of them there. I would love to see Parliament have 50% women. I think we're up at 28% right now, or something along those lines. In Norway and Sweden and many other countries, they're way ahead of us as far as their female representation. And I think, and I know that policies will reflect that, because often it's women who are more sensitive to some of these policies because they've been affected by them.
That's very true.
And part of our job is to make sure that our colleagues in government understand how important things like childcare are. Without childcare, without a woman having child care that's safe and responsible, she's denied all kinds of opportunities because she has to stay home. And that's why we continue to have women in poverty, even as they age. It's women who are in poverty because they never had a chance. Even if they got into the workforce and worked for 30 years, they'll never catch up to the amount of time a man can put into the workforce. So women are really struggling in many areas, and in order for our country to be as balanced and caring as we want it to be, our liberal policies are put through a gender lens to make sure that they're sensitive to women. As we move forward and reduce the roadblocks that young women like yourself and my own daughters face every day.
Yeah. I think that's a tremendously strong and important message. Closing up, I have sort of a different question. I think a lot of young people show a disinterest generally in politics. You know, a lot of people don't really feel like it concerns them, and I think that, you know, goes for a lot of minorities and you Canadians as well. What would you say to these people? What's your message to this group, this target group?
This is their country.
Yep.
They've made a decision that this is where they want to live, or they were born here.
Exactly.
To ignore politics and not pay any attention because nobody listens. We do listen. You just don't necessarily see it reflected and directly. But, you know, a lot of pressure from communities and people. Politicians do listen. But your chance to vote gives you that chance. If you don't go out and vote, you have no right to complain about anything the government does because you didn't put your X wherever you wanted to put it. You have a responsibility to go out and participate in the elections in this country. That's the only way that you'll see the kind of changes and difference that's there. And I can tell you how very important it is that your girls are fighting for. The right to be able to cast a vote. And unfortunately, in our country, people are getting very laxy-daisy and leaving things go, which is why we have a majority government elected with 39% of the population. I can tell you they do not reflect most of the views of Canadians. But how many didn't go out to vote? So that's what you get.
Yep. I think that, again, is a message that goes out to all of our viewers. I think that's a crucial and valid point. I want to thank Judy Sgro for coming here and spending this time with us, answering all of these questions.
Thank you. It's
thank
been
you so much for your
wonderful opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So this is Maria again for MuBoo TV, and it's all about you.